Hi, I'm Chloe Canning. Welcome back for Season 2 on Lead with Courage. Illuminate Leadership acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, which we will call this podcast the Yagara and Terrible People. We pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging.
Welcome to Lead with Courage, the podcast that celebrates the bold and inspiring stories of leaders making a difference. We're your hosts, Andy and Cherie Canning, and together we'll dive into the minds of the trailblazers, the risk takers, and those who embrace life with a growth mindset.
On today's episode of Lead with Courage, we welcome Dinesh Palipana to the podcast. Dinesh is the second person with quadriplegia to graduate as a doctor in Australia and is only the first with a spinal cord injury. A couple of months ago, I picked up Dinesh's book and thought, man, I'd love to speak to this guy. He would have such a beautiful view on life that I could learn from. And lucky enough, he responded to a message and we have him on the Lead with Courage podcast today. So really excited to share his part of his story, most of which can absolutely be found in his book, but some of which he shares today and more just his perspective on life and sharing his gift with others. So hope you enjoy it. Welcome, Dinesh.
Dinesh, thank you for joining us on the Lead with Courage podcast. This is a conversation we have really been looking forward to, so a huge welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it too.
Thank you. Thank you. The first question we love to ask anyone, and I'm particularly excited for your answer, no pressure, but one of the first questions we always ask our guests is, what does lead with courage mean to you?
I think I feel like you can't have leadership without courage. So I just think, I don't know if it, to me, I don't know if I can say lead with courage, because I feel like courage is a part of what makes up leadership. So I think the two are quintessentially linked. So leaders have to be courageous if they're going to be effective.
Yeah. Yes, I fully agree. I fully agree. And I think when we've both read your book, Stronger, and follow your story. And I mean, for those who might not know you, right now, as far as titles go, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're an author, a speaker. There's a lot under your belt as far as what you've achieved. And I think when we look at 2010, that was a huge changing moment too. And if I've got this right, in 2010, you were 2 years into a medical degree?
Yeah. 2010 was I was 2 years into a medical degree when I had a car accident. I was 24 years old at the time. Just looking at the background behind you today and the rain in Brisbane, it was actually a day that was very similar to this, where it was raining off and on, and I was driving back from visiting my mum in the north side of Brisbane, and my car aquaplaned and I had a rollover, and that was the day that changed my life.
Can I ask, how does it feel when you retell that? Because you must have retold that so many times, not just in your book, but every time you're speaking or being interviewed, I'm sure pieces of this come up. Like, how does that feel to recount?
I actually don't have any feelings towards it.
Okay.
I definitely don't have any negative feelings towards it. It's just something that happened. And if it didn't happen, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. So it's just there are things that we can't change about life, and that's one of them. But the only thing we can change about it is how we view it. I love this saying that there is nothing beautiful without struggle. So one way I can view that is that through that struggle, many beautiful things have happened. And I just choose to view it differently. So yeah, I mean, of course, if we wind back time and if we're in the weeks to months after the accident happened, I would have done anything to turn back the clock and not have the accident. But today I know it's something that happened. Today I know it's something I can't change. And so I choose to just I choose to see it. I just choose to see it positively because that's what I can control.
Yeah, that's incredible. Would you describe, were you always that way in the optimism and focusing on what you can control? Is this just part of who Dinesh has been since you were a young boy born? I was reading in Kandy in Sri Lanka, right? We've been to Kandy. Has that always been who you are?
Uh, I hope not. I hope that I am not today the person that I was 20 years ago, and I hope in 20 years I won't be the person that I am today. But I think our experiences shape who we are. And growing up in a country like Sri Lanka, where there's a lot of hardship for people, we lived through a war, and I grew up through the civil war between the Sinhalese and Tamil people in Sri Lanka. So I think growing up in an environment like that, where people are poor, where people go through all sorts of struggle, I feel like one learns to uh, view the world a bit differently. So for me, perspective has been really important. I mean, we're so damn lucky to live in a country like Australia, right? Like it's just an incredible place to live, and we have everything. I mean, I just drank. I felt like drinking a soup, so we went to the Japanese restaurant nearby, and they sold me a miso soup, and I could not only choose what I felt like on this rainy day, but I could afford to buy that thing. And I think that's like we got to take stock of those little things, right? Because how many people can't do that? How many people can't afford a soup? How many people can't choose to drink a soup on this day? But we're in amongst 26 million people, or however the population of this country might be, where we can go in peace and for most part can drink a soup if we wanted to.
So true. And I don't think it's unless people have experienced either living somewhere where that is not always your reality, or possibly traveling somewhere, or those who don't get to travel, or maybe it's reading or listening or learning about other places, to where we really get that perspective. It's just so critical, so critical.
Yeah, and you asked me what leading with courage meant, and I think courage is a big part of it. But I also think perspective is a big part of leadership. And for me, that has been really important because this perspective of having come from a different country and a different, vastly different environment, I am reminded that because again, like if we're talking about Australia specifically, but there are many places like that in the world. But what is it that makes our life what it is today? And I think a part of it is actually the philosophies that we have built this society by. We believe in things like fairness and justice, equity. We believe in things like, we invest in the entrepreneurial spirit. We provide education and employment. We make sure that the marginalized, we fight for those people. So I think I've got that perspective that actually not everywhere in the world is like that. The rich poor gap is so big in Sri Lanka. I went there a few years ago, and I love cars. So I got to go for a drive with this guy who had a Lamborghini there, and this Lamborghini was hugely expensive in that country. Like we're talking over $1 million.
Wow.
And I'm in this car, and I'm in this apartment building, which is again in the millions of dollars. So there are security guards and everything guarding this building, and I jump into the car with this guy, and I go for a drive. So we pull out of the apartment building, and we drive down the street. And nearly immediately, there are people lining the road who are begging for food. There are people dragging themselves on the ground who have no legs. And there's just hundreds of people living in abject poverty who don't know where their next meal's coming from. So I'm driving through this space and I'm thinking, man, I'm in this car that could probably feed all these people for maybe a year if we use that money properly, right? And 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 I think that perspective is important to have for a leader. So the perspective that actually what are we fighting for? What is the risk if we don't fight for something? What does the world look like for someone when we're not here? So I think courage is one component, but I also think perspective is really important for leadership as well.
I'm curious then, in that car, what were the emotions? Like sitting there, seeing what you saw and knowing you're sitting in that car, what emotions did you feel?
Look, like I said, I love cars, right? So and this was a very special vehicle that was just built for this person.
Right.
So the actual experience, the automotive experience, for the enthusiast was incredible. Like I was having a blast. But as a human being, I think it was very conflicting
Yes.
because we have to choose to turn a blind eye to certain things, don't we? Like we see bad things happening sometimes, whether it be in front of us or around the world, and we choose to do nothing about it, or we choose to do something about it. And so I'm like, how do I, yeah, this is, it's very conflicting and it's very difficult to be in that situation. And so I was like, I find it really hard to reconcile this.
Fair.
Yeah, totally fair. And I wonder, I don't know about you, and it sounds like it might be the case, but man, it is tricky. It is tricky to hold like two opposing thoughts in your mind and in your body at the same time. And I wonder, like through your kind of, I guess, medical career and your profession and that sort of thing, I'd imagine that's not an uncommon feeling that you have to look at from a clinical perspective, and then also just from a human perspective. And how do you, I guess, how do you kind of go about? Is that something that comes naturally to you, or how do you go about doing that?
I think for me, values have been really important. So um, I met a politician once, and she told me that when she first took office, she got this piece of advice from someone. And they said, when you make hard decisions, you got to think about what your values are. And she thought, you know what? I've never written down what my values are. So she wrote them down and she stuck it to the wall in her office. And she said, this is me, and these are the things that I believe in. So it's been her compass, or some call it the North Star of where to go. So for me too, after the accident and after I had the spinal cord injury, I spent a lot of time laying in bed and recovering and just thinking about life, right? And just to take a sidestep, there's this beautiful book called Stillness is the Key, which was written by Ryan Holiday. And it's a series of books that he wrote. One is called Courage. One is on courage. Courage is calling. One is Discipline is destiny. One is Ego is the enemy. And there's a couple of others. Anyway, this book on stillness is amazing because it tells you how sometimes we need to be still to really discover ourselves. So this spinal cord injury forced me to be still for a period of time, and I was in bed and I was thinking about, okay, thinking a lot about life, and I'm like, you know, who do I want to be now? Like, because everything's destroyed and I have to try and rebuild myself, and who do I want to be? So I actually did the same exercise. I'm like, probably need to, I want to write down what I'm about and what the values are. So when time comes, where you beautifully said, Andy, when there are those uncomfortable situations where there are two conflicting emotions, or two conflicting things in the mind. I think we just need to be value driven.
Mm.
And you're absolutely right. There are times in healthcare and at work where I face these situations, but the decision is easy. I don't think decisions are ever hard. We always know in our heart what the right decision is, but doing it is hard.
Mm.
And I think that's the thing. So I've always used the values as a compass, and there have been times where the decision was easy, but it's just been hard to do it.
Can I ask about your values? Are they ones that you publicly share, and what are they, if so? And if not, they're just close to you and your compass internally.
So, leading on from leading on from Ryan Holiday and his books, there's a lot of philosophies based on Stoicism.
Yes, I think I have followed. I might have exchanged some messages with you over this because the daily Stoic posts and the different quotes that you've reshared, and yeah, we're big fans. It's powerful stuff.
But one of the things they encourage you to do is not to talk about what it is to be a good person, but rather to be one.
Yes, yes.
And not to talk about your philosophies, but rather to embody them.
Yes.
But I guess if there are things that I value, I think for myself, it's always an attempt. I think it's a never-ending journey. But I feel like things like integrity, honesty, I feel like things like service, those are the kind of values, discipline, and just an attempt to be a good person in this world. And we fall, right? We fall all the time. Like there is always something better we can do, but I think those are the things that I try to aim for.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
I know we talked about values, but if we talk about purpose, how does that show up for you with purpose and values being inextricably linked? Is it something that you're able to define as well? And does it govern any decision making that you have?
I feel like purpose probably flowers out of our values if we identify what those things are. So for me, like purpose has been humanity and what I can do for a human being, which is why I became a doctor. And I feel like I don't feel like I work a day in my life. So I just feel like I get to do something that's meaningful to me. And purpose is really important, right? Because I think for a part of my life, I just existed. And I existed and I was looking for things that, I guess I was looking for things that filled a hole. I looked for pleasure, whether it be in, I don't know, I looked for pleasure in all sorts of things. And whether it was partying or going out or, I don't know, whatever, material things. So I was just existing and I was filling that hole with different distractions like pleasure. But when I found purpose, that's when I really started to feel alive and life started to feel meaningful. But for all of us, I feel like purpose is so important, right? And if you look at the people that have really left this world for the better, that have made an impact on our lives and have changed the course of humanity, I feel like those have been human beings that have felt some sense of purpose. So I think purpose is really important because otherwise we're just existing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It may be clearer or easy to say that people who have had big moments in life where you've had to do some big soul searching, it's easier to define purpose than not. Do you agree? Or I mean, it could go either way, right? It could go to the point where people then have hopelessness and not be able to find purpose. And big events are such a, that's a vast array. Everyone's got a different perspective of what that is in their lives. But I know when I speak with Andy, like, or he'll often say, like, how do I find that purpose? How do I find that purpose? And he'll then say back to me, like, you know, it's really clear that I've found mine and really aligned in life with that, but not everyone stumbles on it or discovers it as quickly or as clearly. I don't know your thoughts on that. I'd love your perspective.
No, and that's okay. Like I think that's okay. But for the world to truly benefit from us and for us to shine our light into the world, finding that purpose is important. So there's another book called The Alchemist,
Mm.
which
Paul Coelho or something, is that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
I think many people would have read it, but I think for me, and there are many messages in the book, but I think for me, it's about a journey. Like it's about a person taking a journey looking for the treasure. And I think the treasure for me is purpose. But he takes this massive long journey, discovers a lot of things along the way, and ends up finding his purpose. So it's a journey, and I don't think it matters if we go into later in life. And I always talk about Colonel Sanders. He was 65 or something when he founded
Yeah.
KFC. One of the most beautiful moments of my life was having a cup of tea with Merrill Fernando, who's the founder of Dilmah. So I had a cup of tea with the Dilmah guy, and I see Dilmah everywhere, right? It's in the supermarkets, it's all over the world, and everyone enjoys this tea. But he didn't start that company until he was in his 50s either, and he told me this story. But one of the beautiful things about him is that he also does so much for the community,
Mm.
and he doesn't really talk about that much. He's passed away now, so but um, but I think it doesn't really matter. I mean, you see people running for presidencies in the 60s and 70s, and like, so it's the journey, and and that's courage. I think it's about having the courage to take the journey,
Yes.
uh, to take the twists and turns, to try the new things, to seize the opportunities, to perhaps step outside this stream of life.
Mm.
Because again, we're like leaves, right, floating in a little stream, and we just go in the direction of the stream. And that's society. Society has, and I'm not being critical of it because we have a pretty good functioning society, but there is also an expectation of us to do certain things, and so we're like a leaf floating along. But I think sometimes we need to just jump out of that stream and try to and by doing that, not only do we decide our own future, but we have the opportunity to change the direction of the stream as well for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that visual. Absolutely love it. I was talking with someone today. We're having a bit of a very deep conversation, and we're just talking about how often people and we all can just go through life so asleep and just not awake. And she's kind of had a bit of a aha moment recently, and she's like, wow, I'm just noticing this and I'm noticing that, and I couldn't believe these things. And it's like, yes, you've woken, you know. And it sounds a little cliche or even a little woo-woo, but I think just to notice what's around, and maybe that's where the stream, like, do we notice that we're just the leaf on the stream actually just being taken rather than in our own flow, but we're just getting taken, and instead go, right, is this the flow that I wish for my life? Is this where I want it to go? And yeah, just to be awake and conscious.
Which I think is what the movie Matrix tried to allude to in a way. But at the same time, I feel like we need to think of things that are bigger than ourselves as well to find that.
Yes.
And yeah, so I do think we need to believe in things that are bigger than us.
Mm, yes. Can you tell me about empathy? If you'd thrown the values chat back on me and said, Cherie, what do you think my values might be? I'd be like, Dinesh, empathy would have to be in there for you. Practically from what I understand from afar, the way that what do you embody, and how do you go about life? What are your thoughts on that word, on that way of being? How does that connect for you?
Yeah, and I think since we're on the topic of leadership, I think again in the things that make up leadership, I feel like empathy is a big part of it. But empathy is also understanding our fellow human being. And in our world, we are more connected in ways than we are separated. I find it amazing discovering all these little connections that we have with little people along the way, and like we are so connected across the seas and in this world. But empathy it's critical, right? It's critical to spend time understanding our fellow human being. It's critical to spend time understanding why and how they feel a certain way. It's what will make the world move forward. But on this point, I think we find it very easy to make time to understand people who are similar to us or think similarly to us, or might have the same political affiliation, or might have the same religious beliefs, or might have the same scientific persuasions, or whatever it might be. But I think actually the true value lies in understanding people and being empathetic to people who are different to us.
Mm. Mm.
And we live in such a polarized society today. We live in such a divided society today. You know, you take up a position on this thing, or you take up a position on that thing, and they're the polar opposites. And then suddenly you become a communist or a capitalist, or you become I don't know, whatever. We throw these labels around so quickly, but actually, I think if we dig underneath the surface, all of us, or at least I believe 99% of us, want good things for our world and good things for our people. And so if we can find those common threads, we can create a better future, because we're just yeah we are creating a lot of division, and
Yes.
empathy is a big part of solving that.
Agreed. Practically, how do you practice empathy? Like, if we were to follow you around when you're working in the ER and working with patients, or in other parts of the work you do, yeah, how would we see empathy acted out?
Well, I don't know if it's a conscious thing. Like I don't feel like empathy is again a collection of different things.
Mm.
But one of the most powerful bits of advice that I've ever got is from a teacher who had a very important impact on my journey. And she's a doctor, so she's a medical educator. And she says that we have two ears and one mouth, and we should use them in that ratio.
Yes. Yes. I love that. You know, in some of our training workshops, when we're talking about communication, I ask everyone to draw a face with all the items on the face. And they're like, how many ears, how many mouths, use them in proportion. It's so true. So true. And what about, the person who's, there's so many phrases about the person who's listening or speaking, who's actually learning from those perspectives. I think Andy is rejoining. Yeah, so important.
Yeah,
That
and I think if we just spent a little bit more time listening to people, we understand, right? We can learn a lot, and we can understand a lot, and people have amazing stories. I was at a wedding recently, and it was an African wedding, which was incredible. So it was an amazing experience, but there was a Rwandan family there. So we started talking, and I heard their story, and the mum of this family was saying that she lifted her pants up a little bit to show her knees, and there were gunshot wounds through both legs. And she said, I was in Rwanda, and when the troubles happened, and I was shot. and these are the wounds from the guns. And I lost consciousness, and next thing I knew, I woke up. I don't know how long afterwards, but I woke up because bugs were eating me. So there were ants and bugs all over me. And then she just said she dragged herself some safety, and I was like, damn, that is like, what is that human experience? But there, like if we just take a second to listen to someone like that, we're gonna understand that far out. The guy who cut me off on the traffic doesn't matter, right? Like, or the fact that I don't know, like we get upset at the small things.
Yeah.
This person, like, they were shot in the legs and then were eaten by bugs, and then you think, yeah, these are real problems that people have.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and it's actually it's so funny that you've just shared that story, because it was like, what advice would you give to people who face challenges that they seem are insurmountable?
So we are a universe within each of us, and I think uh, the world is a reflection of us in a way. If we're having a bad day, it's a dark world. If we're having a good day, it's a beautiful world.
Mhm.
If we're sad, then the rain is depressing. But if we're happy, the rain is beautiful, right? So I think the world is a reflection of ourselves, and we are a world within ourselves. So um, I think for the guy who has, I had a toothache a few weeks ago, and it was terrible, right? It was the tooth hurts, it's in my head, like I'm up all night and this and that, and I see people coming, but it's just a toothache in the big scheme of things. Um, but for the person who's having a toothache, it's the biggest problem in the world at that time until that goes away. Even though it's probably not a huge issue, then the dentist can sort it out before too long. And it's the same with like those, we get those little things that might be a part of our body that bothers us because the clothes's not sitting right or something. There's a bit of discomfort. So we're a world within us. And I think one thing to acknowledge is that for every different person, their problem may actually feel like the biggest thing on earth, and for them it is. And that's okay. That's a part of life. Everyone's different and everyone has issues, and we have to acknowledge and respect and understand that. But I think a way to navigate that is really to have some perspective about how lucky we are, and to have perspective about the people who are unlucky, that like my new friend who was shot in the legs, and who couldn't walk around, and they think far out. People have some serious problems in this world, right? There are people right now getting shot in other parts of the world, like right now, people are being shot at.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I think another strategy is to count our blessings. And I always wonder if there's a lot of um, merit to some of the religious practices that we've been doing, or the rituals that we've been doing. Like Thanksgiving once here in the US, or in Christianity, we give thanks to our meal every night. In Buddhism, there are similar philosophies, but I think giving thanks to the things that we do have reminds us that actually, even though today's a really hard day, I still have food, I still have shelter, I still have a pair of shoes. So I'm still talking to Andy and Cherie, and those are pretty good wins. So also giving thanks, I think, is a spiritual, religious, and personal activity that we've been doing for a long time, and maybe there's something to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the research on, say, gratitude and how it rewires our brain, like the research backs that up, doesn't it?
There are studies. There are some studies that demonstrate that, hey, maybe there's something here. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally, I've got my little note here. Dinesh, outlook on life, gratitude and perspective, which it's like 100% the conversation, which is, it's just so powerful. Andy, for you, questions?
I love that kind of anecdote that Dinesh just shared. I remember one of the more interesting 10-minute experiences I had this year was just at a rooftop on a hotel in Sydney, chatting to a guy who was just kind of like smuggling a beer up, basically, just to have a look out and see the sights. And after 10 minutes, found out like his name's Joe. He served in a couple of tours in Afghanistan. He kind of comes from an army family. And I asked him, like, what does a hard landing look like for a vet when you come back from war, and what does a soft landing look like? And he sort of pulled up his pants, and he showed me that there's a piece of his shin bone missing from where he got shot by the Taliban. And then he proceeded to talk about how he spent, the better part of 6 months in Frankfurt, basically in a hospital bed. So he got shot there, but then he was part of his deployment, I guess. They got blown up by an IED and lost two of his closest mates that day, that he'd enlisted with and served with. And I remember walking away from that, not too dissimilar to the story you just told, and just thinking, like, I remember seeing him, he was just looking at the streets of Sydney, in the middle of the CBD, not exactly a quiet place. And he's just like, how good is this? People are just walking along, like there's no risk to them right now. They're kind of just enjoying it. They're soaking it up. There's lots of atmosphere. And I don't know, for that moment, it took me away from whatever activity was happening kind of in my head, or whatever perspective I'd lost had come back in that moment. And I'm like, well, you're kind of there in the moment that you're in. And I wonder if that's such a big link to, and apologies, I might have missed this before, but a big link to mental health is a link through to perspective. And I wonder, like, over time, and I'm probably sharing my own journey here, where I know that if I just get a bit off, which happens from time to time, it can be just a lack of probably seeing the forest for the trees, and having that kind of bigger view, and knowing that there's plenty of things to be grateful for, and plenty of things to kind of be in the moment for. And things can be, it's that dual thing in your mind, right? Where things can be tough and you can acknowledge that they're tough, but then also they're also beautiful. And then through that struggle is some kind of message or lesson or thing to hold.
I love that. And I love that story because I think it's poetic, right? So on top of a building with you, there's this person who fought for a cause and was wounded in it, and sort of is up on this building looking out into the world again. And his outlook's probably so different to the people who are wandering down there on the streets, because how many of those people actually are thinking that I'm safe and that I'm soaking up this atmosphere? I wonder.
Probably not that many, I'd say. Like, it's yeah, I mean, it's obviously a rhetorical question. I wouldn't expect Dinesh to look to me for the answers there, but it was just really, it was a unique moment, and that's the message and the essence that I got all through your book as well, is that they're just sort of fundamentally unique moments, and in kind of retrospect, you can apply them to the current day, and you can apply them to whatever you're happening. So today was the miso soup, and it was glorious, and you can fund that, and you can enjoy that, and other people can enjoy it too. And how lucky are we to have that?
So lucky.
Yeah, so lucky. So lucky. I laugh at the concept of the rain, it's how glorious that we've got this beautiful rain, because it's cooling down this heat. But then, you know, at the same time, I think earlier today I said on a message to someone, I hope your day isn't as gloomy as the rain right now. But it's so yeah, it's such an important reminder of our perspective, and there's always a choice, always a choice.
Always a choice. And I think that's the key part, isn't it? The choice. The choices that we make. We are so lucky to have free will and choice. And even amongst human beings, the three of us have more choice than many people ever will.
Yeah, yes. And, you know, I feel like extremely grateful. And I know that now we're talking about giving thanks and gratitude. It may sound too scripted, but like I have just immense excitement bursting out of me that you've chosen, and I'm so deeply grateful that you've chosen to come and have this conversation with us. I saw that the awards you were winning a couple of year or two ago, or recently, and so I've seen your name and I saw your TED Talk pop up, and I'm like, cool, this guy's cool. And then it wasn't until some good friends of ours from Cornerstone Medical Recruitment, and you're on there. Yeah, and so you're on their podcast, and I'm like, oh, and had a little listen. And then when we had a long weekend. Actually, it was at Virgin Australia. They handed out your book at Virgin Australia. I think maybe it was Andy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was it was all around diversity, or was it around a day for ability and disability awareness or something?
Yes, it very well could have been.
I mean, that's what I remember. And you came home and said they've given these books out today. Like, it was a significant day in the calendar for diversity and inclusion, and they gave your books out at Virgin. And so I'm like, I'll read that, because I straight away, and I recall so clearly putting it on my Instagram and you responding, and I went, oh my goodness, thank you so much. And then very courageously said, any chance you'd want to come and chat with us on this podcast? And I remember Sam had said to me, Sam Miklos from Cornerstone said, oh, one of the things I loved about Dinesh is he said he just says yes to opportunity. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that you agreed and you were able to gift your time to us. And to me, then it's so aligned to that legacy and the impact and your philosophies and way of seeing life. Like, I have no doubt will change someone's day to day when they listen, as it has for us. But yeah, I really thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Cherie. And the it's a privilege for me. I always think, man, I can't believe I'm at someone would want to talk to me and listen to me and chat with me. So I am very grateful, and I'm often humbled hugely.
Oh, it's amazing. I feel like I can't finish this conversation without you telling us about your mum. Tell us about what your mum means to you. And because I just think listening to the way you've written about your mum in your book is next level. And yeah, would you mind sharing a few words of the impact and how she inspires you?
Yeah, I think when we talk about things like empathy and courage, uh, and perspective, I feel like my mum is one of those people who has, for me, embodied all these things. She's a hero, and she's been there for me after the spinal cord injury happened. She's been there for me all my life. She's taught me so many things, and I think she's taught me about what love really is, because it's unconditional from her. Like it is a mother's love, or her love is. It's been unconditional for her kid. And when I really struggled, she gave up her marriage. When I had the accident, she gave up her career. It's very hard to find that kind of love in this world and in this universe. So mom has taught me so many things, and she continues to fight for others. And yeah, I just think people ask me who my hero is. I don't really have to look far. She's stomping around nearby.
As a mum, I only dream of the day that my daughter is an adult and is able to say, that every day I hope that is the impact or the way that she sees me. We've got to get through some teen years yet, I'm sure we'll come through all that. But yeah, that's just stunning. I do have another random question when it comes to heroes, but it may not be a hero. Maybe it's purely just decorative. But behind you, you've got some pictures, and I can only kind of see half of them. Who are in your photos?
So I love music. Music's a big part of my life, and I think a bit of that came out of growing up in Byron Bay. So Byron Bay was a very musical town, and I learned to play guitar there. It was just it was a beautiful place to grow up in. So I actually was chatting to an old schoolmate who's a teacher now in Melbourne, and he gave me my very first rap mixtape, and the song on it was Regulate by Warren G. So that tape, when I was, I think, probably about 13 years old, started this lifelong love of music and hip hop and rap. So the pictures behind me were given to me by a friend, and it's Tupac and Biggie and Eazy-E. So they're paintings of those three, and they're rap icons. So that's who they are.
Cool. That is cool. I'm like looking at I'm seeing their chest, and I'm like, oh, who is that? Who is that? Awesome.
Dinesh, we have something in common there. I remember the first ever mixtape that someone ever gave me was like in grade 4 at my own version of 8 Mile at the time, which is kind of at Eagle Junction State School and just off Junction Road there. And I remember the first song on the mixtape was Regulate.
Oh, hey, wow.
Or Regulators or something like that. And then I actually can't remember what the rest of the songs were, because I remember as soon as song 2, 3, and 4 came on, my mum confiscated the mixtape because there were is every second or third word was one of the unmentionables. And for a kind of a budding 9-year-old, that was maybe a little bit too much at the time. But man, I loved it. And certainly I know when I ran a marathon this year, and then part of the training for that was almost dialing back all the songs and all the music that I had from like the 90s and the 2000s that I got introduced or influenced to, that would just be super upbeat, and hip hop and rap or punk was just such a huge part of that for me, unashamedly so, but also a little bit of embarrassment admitting that out loud. But music is such a personal thing, right? It's like where it takes you and what it encourages you to do. So
love it. That's so cool. Shared history.
That is awesome. Andy, do you have any last questions?
No, I don't. I'm just so grateful that we get to share a minute or two with you today, and be gently reminded of how beautiful life is and how important it is to stay in the moment to get that perspective. So thank you.
Thank you both for having me. You're amazing.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. Keep making the change in the world that you are. And yes, thank you so much for your time. And I'm just, really grateful that we've had this moment. Thank you.
Likewise. See you soon, Cherie and Andy.
Thanks for joining us on the Lead with Courage podcast. We illuminate leadership, and it's our mission to inspire and grow the leaders of today to create a better tomorrow. We hope and trust that this episode has given you some insights and joy to empower you to live your biggest, best life. If you did enjoy the episode, we'd be so grateful for you to rate and share wherever you listen to this podcast. And until next time, go and lead with courage.